Hey guys, so in this video we are going to talk about communication, and more specifically we are going to talk about team communication in a software development team. So let's get into it. So to give you a bit of a backstory, the past, I think it's, say the past two weeks, I have been working on a fairly large feature for the company, and we're still testing and verifying and doing all that good stuff. And the other day, we have something, I don't know if you know this concept, but it's called a retrospective. And basically the idea there is that you have an evaluation meeting for every X amount of weeks, where you kind of sit down with your team basically and your colleagues, and you evaluate how things have been going. And in our meeting that happened just a few days ago, the key issue that we discussed was that we have a problem with basically people kind of getting in each other's way, if that makes sense. Since you were all working on the same features, or very closely on the same features, it very often becomes, somebody's working on something that somebody else is already working on, and we're not really communicating and all that stuff. So and this is not new, this has been a recurring theme, and I think this is true for most companies. Communicate, and even relationships, for God's sake. I mean, communication is like my favorite, we're not communicating enough. That's my absolute favorite go-to for any social issue we humans have. Everybody's talking about, you just have to communicate more and more. And we do the same thing, we're no different. So as I said, I think it's 9 weeks or nine meetings running, that has been the same thing we've been saying over and over. And it was the exact same issue we had at my previous jobs. Because what usually happens when people talk about communications is that they simply state that, we're gonna get better at communication. We're gonna do it better. And I kind of go, sure. And then I just follow along. Next retro meeting, we have the same discussion. We're gonna have to be better at communicating, all right? And we go to the next one. We have to be better at communicating, and it just keeps on going and going and going and going. Because the thing is with promising something is that it never happens unless something changes. That's my argument anyway. I argue that any system that requires human interest is doomed to fail. It's absolutely doomed to fail all the time. The only system that is sustainable over time is a system that has physical restrictions or a very good incentive system. That's how I've argued. If you bet the solution to a problem on people being interested in solving that problem over time, you've already lost, because that's not how humans work. Humans lose interest in things, and they get distracted and so forth, unless there's a physical restriction or they have an incentive to stick to something. Said and done. We've been doing this for several weeks, right? So what am I building up to? Well, I'm building up to that it's basically something, a technique I want to talk to you guys about, and I want to share it because it's something that I've started doing, because I've realized that I can't, because you don't want to be the person who tells everybody else that, we should do this and do that and so forth. You kind of want people to figure out things themselves. I was actually talking to my boss about this. He was saying to me, I was kind of having a heart-to-heart to him, and I said, Jonas, you have to take these things seriously, because the biggest limitation for the team is that we don't have any type of process. I know process is a bad word in the startup world, but the fact of the matter is that you have a bunch of people who have only worked here for a few months. They have, and the company is still very young. You have no structure whatsoever in your working environment, and that may work, but when it's not working, you have to introduce these processes in order to get the ball rolling. You have to cultivate habits, because if they are not naturally growing, then it's not going to happen. It's the same thing with losing weight or going to be a fitness person. You can promise yourself 100 times that you're going to eat less, or that you're going to start going to the gym. But if you're not naturally doing it, then you have to introduce a change that cultivates that habit. And he said, yeah, sure, yeah, that sounds awesome. Can't you do it? And I just looked at him, yeah, sure, I can do it, but that's not how, I don't want, you put me in a very bad position there, because I don't want to be the only person who pushes something. It has to be a joint effort, because like it's like the environment. I mean, it doesn't matter if a single country goes all green and everybody else is still pumping out toxins like crazy. Everybody has to be on board, and everybody has to, as a collective, realize the value in doing something. And then he said, yeah, sure, but we need somebody to kind of get the ball moving. And I said, okay, sure, I'll try something that I did at my previous job that has been working out very well, and we'll see how it goes. And this is what I'm going to tell you. So one of my favorite ways to cultivate two things, which is like communicating between two people, basically you and the team, like basically keeping a dialogue, continuously a dialogue going. And the second thing is very nice, which is that it actually cultivates a learning experience as well. I've been talking about in the past, code reviews is a very nice platform to do that. But there's another way that I prefer more than code reviews, and that is that whenever you pick a story card or a workload or whatever, before you even start working, you read the specification, you create a solution in your head. Basically, you think about what you're going to do in order to solve this problem. And then you ask your colleague to come over, and then you explain it's that simple. You just explain what you are going to do. You're talking about things such as, okay, I'm going to create these classes or these services, and I'm thinking I'm going to set up these endpoints, etc., etc. You just explain it like a rubber duck, basically, to the person, to your colleague, how you're going to approach this problem. And just by starting to get in the habit, regardless, it doesn't matter if you already know what you're going to do. Doesn't matter if it's such a, it's a small thing or if it's a big thing. Just sitting down with your colleague, explaining what you are going to do in order to solve this problem, or how you think about this problem, will get the ball rolling. That's what I find anymore. Anyway, and it builds a bit of comfort. It's especially valuable when you're in a more, how do I say, like less a fresh group, if you will, a group that hasn't really settled in and gotten comfortable with each other just yet. And usually that works out very well. It naturally creates a dialogue about, okay, you're saying that you're going to try to solve it this way, and what's very beneficial about just stating, this is it, that's why I love it. By just explaining what you're going to do before you do it, you give everybody at that meeting, or like it's not a meeting, just at the table, a chance to hear what you're saying. And what's beautiful about that is that if you have, let's say that you made a mistake, let's say that you made, I did it just the other day, I forgot to follow my own rule, and I implemented a solution for CSV files. Took me half a day to cover all the corner cases. I was very happy with myself. Pushed the code. My CTO comes over, why did you build this? I said, because I needed to have CSV files. And he said, yeah, but we have a library for that. Oh, well, that's dumb. And then I had to throw away the whole thing and to use the library instead. Now, you could argue that I could have searched for this as well, but as I said to my CTO, there are things that I naturally assume are not part of a project. Like, I would not suspect a CSV file formatting thing or like something like that to actually be a part of the code base, because it's just not something that I naturally assume is going to be somewhere in the project that I can find. But that was my mistake. But what was beautiful, and that's kind of where what I was saying earlier comes into play. But if I had simply done what I was saying, if I had simply just explained how I was going to approach this problem, then my CTO would have had the chance to correct me and say, hey, yeah, I understand what you're thinking, but you don't have to do all that work. You just have to go and look at that code over there, because we already have a solution for that. So it's a nice way to assure that you are clearly communicating your intentions, and that you at the same time give everybody a chance to input their opinions and maybe their knowledge and learning into what you're going to do before you actually start working on it. So hopefully this was useful to you. Have a great day.